a bed.
We were in there for about 6 months. That's how long they kept my dad locked up. And as soon as he got out of jail, he came out and he got us out of the school. He took us back out in the bush. And so the first experience was for 6 months. And the following year, it was the same thing again, that they came after him, and he took up arms again to try and keep us at home, and because he didn't believe that the priests had any good intentions. So they came again and arrested him. He ended up going to jail again for another 6 months, and they couldn't keep him in jail for too long. After he got out of jail, he did the same thing. He came to the residential school there. He beat up the priest, and he come and took us out.
We ended up in this bus, and I was crying. Where are you taking us? How come you're letting us go? I said that to my mother in Ojibwe. And tears were just coming down her eyes, and I remember saying, why'd that happen? And my little brother was crying. He was only 4 years old then. He didn't know what was happening.
The moment that we were separated from our family was a moment that I will never, ever forget. It was the moment that the actual physical separation happened. And that marked a new life for me, one that I thought would never have so much negative consequences over time, over the years. But that was the moment that destroyed my family the way I knew it. I would have been in tears just thinking about it. I used to cry all the time just thinking about that one moment because it was so painful.
And I remember when they opened the door, the nuns were there to greet us. They were dressed in black and white. You know, they had these big beads on them, you know, and they opened the door, said, "Hi, welcome," you know. And the first thing I saw was this huge sculpture or an image of a man they had nailed to the cross. He was nailed to the cross like that. And all he had was just a robe, something around him. And he had thorns around his head, and there was bleeding, and his heart was open, and his eyes was closed. And his feet were nailed together. And I didn't know what it was. I was thinking, you know, is this what they're going to do to us? What did this guy do to be treated like that? Who could ever do such a thing like that to another human being? I was thinking, you know. Of course, you don't ask that kind of questions.
The priest there told us that he was going to teach us about God and how much love that the Creator has for us. But my experience was totally opposite than learning about love. And there was a lot of abuse. We were told not to speak Ojibwe. We were told it was the devil's language, and we had to learn English. So we remained quiet for quite a while before we learned to speak English. We had to learn it pretty fast.
Some of the children there, I didn't know were from our reserve, spoke to us in our language. And they asked me what I had in my hand, and I had told them I had a number. And they showed me how to say 36, and to understand 36. When you call 36, you go up in front to the nuns. When they call that number, they said that to me in Ojibwe. And I said, okay.
They gave us a number, and I remember my number was 52. And that's what they treated you after, like a number.
They took care of you. Like they gave you a bed to sleep in. They fed you, and well, not good, but enough to survive. Three people, 3 children died all that time when I was there. Nobody to see them go. They're just suffering, they're moaning and groaning in pain, I guess. Next morning they're dead.
They don't take one, they took us all. The whole nation. They took us all.
That was a nightmare when I remember today.
This land, my home, has spoken. Like the wind, it speaks of a storm brewing in places that have remained quiet for far too long, places not far from here. The wind has called me back within the trees to once again breathe inside an atmosphere that feels like the very lungs of Mother Earth. There are many ghosts that whisper, and like the cool, sticky air, they have penetrated my skin and sit just beneath the surface.
So bananas. 2 bananas would be enough, you think?
Personally, I went to residential school for 6 years. And that's a short time compared to a lot of other people. Some students went 10 years. Even if you were there for one night, that was a long time. That was a long time.
What I really can't get over is the white people. Well, I guess they didn't like us very much. That's what I figured today. When I think back, it seems like they didn't like us, the white ladies.
I was good friends with 2 girls there, then we decided to run away, like get away, because we were caught and brought back by the police. I was sorry I ran away then, because I knew what I had to go through, like for punishment. Of course, we were strapped. And not just here, like all the way up both sides. That was the punishment. Then we were separated because I never saw those girls again. They took them to different floors. We weren't allowed to talk to each other again.
I come from a home like everybody else with a lot of affection. My dad used to wrestle with me. He used to tickle me with his whiskers, and I used to hug my mom every time she would cook. And that's one of the first things that I missed, was the affection.
Sometimes I wonder if they had treated me a little nicer, I may have turned out a nice person.
And they told us what we were, like they brought you down. That was my punishment.
What did they tell you?
All kinds of things. We'd never amount to be anything. We were no good. We were with the devil, like, because of what we did.
For a long time, the teachings that I received through the Roman Catholic Church and also entering a different education institution, a different view of the world, led to a lot of difficulties in my life. And I struggled. I ended up abusing alcohol for a number of years. I drank from the time that I was old enough, even younger, from about 14 to about 28 years old. I drank pretty heavily. I used to do a lot of drugs, and I got into a lot of trouble. I spent most of my time locked up behind bars for that during those times in my life.
A lot of my friends made it, and a lot of them didn't, you know. And I'm very happy to survive that, you know.
When they invited me, the nuns invited me into their room. I remember we're not supposed to see them out of their robes, right? Or their whatever. When they asked me to go into the room, I'd see their hair really long. They asked me to brush their hair. That's all I remember. Next thing I remember, waking up on the bed, you know. And I remember one time, one of the girls, you know, screaming, "No!" And I just covered my ears, and that was it, because I knew I couldn't do anything to help her.
You dream about them sometimes. You could hear them coming down the hall. Dark. The halls were dark. You could hear them coming. You always wondered, did I do anything wrong? What did I do now? Wonder what I did. You see them coming, you didn't know what they were going to do.
My good friend, she was 12 years old. She says to me, "I want to run away because I don't like the way they're treating us here." "Well, aren't you going to get beaten up if they catch you?" "They're not going to catch me," she said, you know. So I didn't say anything. I didn't want to tell on them. So they took off.
Within those walls were abuse of different types: physical, sexual, emotional, psychological, mental, cultural. All those abuses coming down on little kids, and the effects of those abuses continue to reverberate in our communities.
I don't know. Well, for myself, I think that's why I drank. I drank a lot.
Why do you think you drank a lot?
Sadness made me happy. I thought it did. You know, forget. Stuff like that. That's why I drank. I think anyway, you know. I drank so it made me forget things. And I thought I was happy when I drank, but I found out later that I wasn't really happy. Yeah, it affects me. I think of a lot of things about the school, things they did. I think of that. But there's a lot of things too I don't like to talk about either.
So the next day, I heard their silent whispers, and I was wondering what happened. Then finally, one of my friends came up to me and said, "You know your friend? She passed away yesterday." I said, "How?" I could feel these feelings floating up, and I said, you know, and what happened was they just made it up the hill of that school, made it up, and someone caught them behind that hill. Two men caught them. I don't know who they were, but their bodies were totally naked when they found them. Totally naked, and they both died. One of the girls her head was decapitated. I didn't want to say, I didn't want to mention this in the interview, but I want to honor her too, because she was my friend.
For 5 years I was in the boarding school. In 1963, when I came back from the boarding school, it was the last time that I saw my mom and my dad. And there was a terrible accident involving people from the community from Karamat. And my dad was involved in it, my grandfather and my grandmother, and some of my good friends' parents, Teresa McGraw and Roger McGraw and Marceline Finlayson. We all knew each other. Everybody knew each other that was involved in that accident. And when my mother died that night, she came to me. She came to visit me, and she put me down on the floor just like the way she does. She taught me how to pray. And she says, "Roy," he said, "my boy," he said, "pray hard." He said, it's gonna be hard for you." And that's when I accepted that, that she was gone, but her spirit is with me all the time.
Must have been 16. I was 16 when I left school. But I think when I was about 40, I think that's when I really had cornered. I felt I was cornered, because with all that anger in me all that time, that's when I started drinking. My husband was abusive. He was drinking too much. I didn't like his drinking, because we had to run away all the time. Go sleep in the bush. Get away. Yeah, just to be away from his drinking habits.
And then I started to drink. Well, I was young. There was no excuse. Today, I still apologize to myself for thinking that way. Thinking I was better than everybody. Only Roy Thomas could do this. I don't have to go and cut wood anymore. I just turn up the heat if I want to. If I want water, I just turn on the tap. And gosh, I started feeling a lot better. In fact, better than myself. Forgetting myself. I'm just an artist that did native art. Because native Nishnabeg people don't live like this the way I live. I'm not a native, no. I'm just an artist that does native art. So when I started thinking like that, I got myself into a lot of trouble.
This one school, my brother was playing with the other boys, and it was underneath there's a foundation, right? So some of it of the school was breaking apart underneath, so they decided to crawl in. Under that foundation, they found some baby bones there, and they brought it out.
I got to a